Okay, so this video is going to talk about fertilizer. Fertilizer 101. I'm just going to give you a little knowledge about fertilizer, a little what's what, and the difference between synthetic and organic fertilizers. Okay, so let's start out with this question. What is fertilizer? Fertilizer is nutrients. That's all that it is. Now you're going to see these nutrients on the bottle or fertilizer container that you get. It's going to have these three numbers on it, and it might say something like 10, 15, 10. Basically, what those three numbers are, what I like to call them is the big three. If you get a thing of fertilizer, it's always going to have these three numbers on it. Maybe 10, 10, 10, or 20, 20, 20. In this case, 10, 15, 10. Each of those numbers stands for a different macronutrient. A macronutrient is just a nutrient that the plant needs more of versus a micronutrient which the plant needs less of. So say it says 10, 10, 10. That means 10% is a specific nutrient, 10% is a specific nutrient, and 10% is a specific nutrient. Now, what are the big three? What are those big three nutrients? These macronutrients? These nutrients are N, P, and K. Can you remember that? NPK. And then it's a little tricky to remember, but just say it over and over and I bet you'll get it. NPK, 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 NPK. Each of those letters stands for a nutrient. So N is nitrogen, P is phosphorus, and K is potassium. Let's start with the first one. Nitrogen. What does nitrogen do? Now, nitrogen helps with the foliage of the plant. It helps with the leaves. Phosphorus is important for healthy roots, fruits, and flowers. And K, potassium, is important for a lot of different things. But one of the things it does is disease prevention. Okay, so that's what they all do. That's what all the nutrients, all the macronutrients, what they do. Now I'm going to show you an example of a fertilizer that I have and what it does. This is a Miracle-Gro Bloom Booster Flower Food. The numbers say 15, 30, 15. And that means that 15% of this is nitrogen, 30% is phosphorus, and 15% is potassium. So the reason why the phosphorus numbers are way up is because of what it is. It is a bloom booster. And remember, phosphorus is important for the fruits, the flowers, the roots, remember? It's more concentrated so that the flowers will receive some extra nutrients in the hopes of getting better flowers. So yeah, that's just a little example for you. So there's two types of fertilizers and there's a debate between them. Which one is better? There's what is called synthetic fertilizer and what is called organic fertilizer. And these two have things that are positives and things that are minuses, but in the end, you're going to be able to choose which one you like, which one you want to use to fertilize your plants with. So synthetic fertilizers have a higher concentration of nutrients, and that's because they're more non-naturally made than organic fertilizers are, in that people concentrate synthetic fertilizers. They're synthetic. Versus organic fertilizers, which are not concentrated. The nutrients in them aren't concentrated, and so the nutrients are obviously less. So what does that mean with our NPK? That means the numbers on synthetic fertilizers, the NP and K, the big three, are higher than those on organic fertilizers. So say you have a thing of fertilizer and the numbers on it are 20, 20, 20. That's probably a synthetic fertilizer because the numbers are generally higher versus a fertilizer that says 1, 2, 2. If it says 1, 2, 2, it's probably an organic fertilizer because the numbers are lower, which means there's a lower percentage of them in the fertilizer. Synthetic fertilizers have more nutrients than organic fertilizers. They also are able to be taken up by the plant easier, and that's because they're in a form that the plant can take up really quickly. Organic fertilizers aren't in a form that the plant can take up really quickly. So one of the examples I've seen is this. Say you have a yellow lawn. If you put synthetic fertilizer on there, it's going to get green really fast. But if you put organic fertilizer on there, it's going to take a longer time. And that's because the microbes need to change the nutrients into a form that can be used by the plant. And that takes time. And so synthetic fertilizers are quicker releasing, and organic fertilizers take a longer time. They're slow release. Okay, so synthetic fertilizers have a higher number of nutrients in them, and they're easily taken up by the plant really quickly. Does anybody see a problem here? There's a describing word that describes the plant when it takes up too many nutrients. It's called burn, okay? You do not want to burn your plants. If you say, oh, I gave it such and such fertilizer, it was way too much fertilizer, I burned my plants. Burning your plants is a bad thing. Just get that in your mind. It's a bad thing. And with synthetic fertilizers, it's easy to burn your plants. And that's because they have more nutrients in them. And those nutrients are easily taken up by the plant really quick. So there's a higher chance of you burning your plant if you get the synthetic fertilizers. Organic fertilizer, you can still burn your plants, but there's a less likelihood. There's a less of a chance that you're going to burn your plants because it's slow release and there's not that many nutrients in it. Macro and micronutrients in the soil are just like food for humans. It's good, right? It's good in moderation, but if you take too much of it, then bad things happen. The same thing with plants, except they get burned, which is also bad. And so yeah, hopefully you have that through your mind now, because I've said it so many times. So I already told you there's macro and micronutrients. One of the bad things about synthetic fertilizers is that they generally don't have micronutrients. They only have macronutrients. Organic fertilizers do have micronutrients in them. One thing to think about is, do you really need micronutrients? I mean, if you pot your plant, and I'm generally thinking of indoor plants when I'm saying this, if you pot your plant with good soil that has micronutrients already in it, do you really need to add more micronutrients? I mean, is it that big of a deal to do it? So here's another thing to think about. With synthetic fertilizers, the numbers on them are guaranteed. And what I mean by that is that if you have synthetic fertilizer and it says 20-20-20, you know that 20% is N, 20% P, 20% K. But if you have an organic fertilizer and it says maybe 1-2-2, you can't really guarantee that because they're not put in there by a human, and you just can't guarantee that the numbers are correct. So in a way, it's like, oh, I want to do synthetic fertilizers because I know what I'm putting in the soil. But with organic fertilizers, it's more of a natural way. Like, you're not measuring out each of the nutrients and putting them in. It's kind of like you have a general gist of what you're putting in your soil, but you don't know for sure with organic fertilizers. So I'm actually in the editing process now, and I realized that I missed two crucial points. And these 2 points are pretty crucial because they're the reason why I think organic fertilizers are better than synthetic fertilizers. And I didn't add them, so I'm just going to add them now. So here's the thing. Organic fertilizers are better for the environment, and synthetic fertilizers aren't as good for the environment. That's kind of what they're known for. And there's two main reasons that I have for this. Okay, so let's just start with the first one. Organic fertilizers help the soil, and synthetic fertilizers just help the plant. So if you have organic fertilizers and you put it on the soil, say you're growing vegetables or something outside, so over time, when you're putting the fertilizer on, the organic fertilizer, it's going to make the soil better. But if you just put synthetic fertilizer on there, it's only going to help the plant. Okay? So that's one thing, is that it actually helps the soil over time. Organic fertilizer does. And then another thing is, okay, so let's just backstep. So synthetic fertilizers have a tendency to go right out of the soil because they're water soluble and they just leak right out, okay? Now, those nutrients can get into waterways, and that just totally destroys the ecosystem. A bunch of algae grows. Algae, algae, I don't know. A bunch of algae grows, and then it all dies, uses all the oxygen, the fish die, everything clogs up. It's just bad, okay? It's bad, 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 bad. It's not good for the environment, okay? That's another reason why synthetic fertilizers are not a very good idea. That was a lot of information, but here I'll post something up. This is all about synthetic and organic fertilizers. So just take a look at this and you can use it for, whenever you need it. Okay, that's pretty much all I have on fertilizer. You made it to the end of the video. Good job. This is the van that I was using to film in, just in case you wanted to know why I was filming in a weird place with windows and seats. Anyways, one last thing I want to add is if you're fertilizing your plants, only fertilize your plants when they're growing. Okay, so that's in the growing season for most plants. You don't want to give the plant fertilizer, you don't want to give the plant nutrients if it's not going to use them, if it's not going to use them to grow. So just don't fertilize if the plants are growing. Okay, I think that's it. And yeah, hope you liked this video. Peace. See ya. Dang it. Fell off my tripod.